this is my comfort anime. Lycoris Recoil is what happens when you combine the Japanese desire for cute people and the American desire to shoot people. It's set in this weird place called Japan, where the people live peacefully, but little do they know there are secret agents taking out bad guys behind the scenes to maintain this peace, and those people are weaponized high school girls. This is Lycoris, a secret organization that trains these girls to fight people and go on missions. Why high school girls specifically?
Because money.
There's also a more mysterious in-universe reason that's probably going to be explained at some point, but I'm not going to spoil. Watch the show yourself for that. The story follows our main character Takina, who due to a mistake during a mission gets booted out of her squad and relocated to this nice cafe called Lycoreco, where she intends to go on missions and hopefully get back her original position. There, she meets a woman going through a midlife crisis, the coolest dad ever, and most importantly, her new partner Chisato, an optimistic ball of energy who personality-wise is basically a polar opposite to her. And from there on, we just follow their everyday lives and the adventures they go on. It's really fun, it's really wholesome, and there's a bunch of badass gunfights in there to boot, which leads me to what I believe is the main appeal behind this show, which is that it's freaking adorable. Anyone who says they're watching purely for the fight scenes and that's it is lying, because they don't want to admit the real reason they're sticking around are for the girls themselves. I've heard some people describing this as basically being John Wick but with anime girls, and honestly, kinda? Not really. They both have cool gunfights, but aside from that, they're completely different. John Wick is a story about a brooding, broken man whose last gift from his dead wife was taken from him. And so, he goes back to take revenge on all the ones who wronged him, no matter the cost to himself. Lycoris Recoil is a heartwarming story about a growing friendship spliced with espionage and action, about a girl slowly learning to open up and enjoy life more, and then people start dying. An understandable mistake, but you can see the difference. There is a continuous story throughout it, juxtaposed with a slice of lifey aspect, but done in a way where the two feel intertwined, like you can't have one without the other, giving plenty of opportunity for cute moments that feel natural, while also having an exciting plot gradually unveil itself as the episodes continue, which are my favorite kinds of series in case you couldn't tell by this point. And the writers and animators behind this show have boiled this combination down to a science. You can tell they were super passionate and understood the exact appeal behind each of these characters. There are so many scenes in the show that are genuinely hilarious, but also come naturally as a result from the characters themselves. Like how they tried to draw what the perpetrator looked like and they both utterly failed at it. How Takina is handing out Halloween treats to kids and Chisato sneaks into the line to get one too. At one point, Takina created a chocolate parfait that quite literally looked like shit. Nobody can bring themselves to tell her this, causing them to make it into a legit menu item, which proceeds to become a huge hit. And it is only when Takina sees people posting about it on social media that she realizes what she has done, and she goes, They somehow managed to do a poop joke that was actually funny, and didn't come across as gross out humor. That is a phenomenal achievement in itself. Oh, and also, while I was making this video, which was perfect timing by the way, I realized that they had also just released a series of super short episodes called Friends or Thieves of Time, and it's on YouTube. Go watch the first 2 episodes of that. They're like 2 minutes each, are pretty much spoiler free, and are a great introduction to the characters and comedy of the show. And also watch them if you've already seen the show, obviously, because bonus content is great regardless. I'll link those in the description. But I also just love a lot of the little details they're randomly throwing in. There's the multitude of different outfits they're always wearing, despite the fact that they already have uniforms, and you can see more of these constantly in the outros and in between slides, as if they had so many that they couldn't fit it all into the actual show. The way the characters interact, the way Chisato's smile here just pierces into your heart and soul, the way she says, in fact, Chisato's voice actress constantly has me cracking up just with the way she says certain things. I can't not mention how great their performances are. There's also this little moment I just love in the opening where Chisato playfully kicks Takina and Takina proceeds to kick her back at full force. It's such the perfect summary of their characters, and it's literally just a 2-second clip. This is the thing that convinced me to give the show a real shot. And lastly, speaking of the OP, I cannot express enough just how great the songs are. Especially the ending song by Sayuri, which might just be my favorite ending song of all time. It's really high energy and exciting, but there's something so emotional and bittersweet about it in a way that I can't quite describe. Like, it's the exact sort of thing you'd imagine while reminiscing over happy memories when the story's finally over, and I bet it could be super hard hitting if a version of this song plays when that day comes. And then of course, there's the characters themselves. Possibly my favorite character introduction in the entire show surrounds a character named Walnut, who we never see the identity of, but is considered to be the greatest hacker in Japan. Due to story reasons, he's been targeted, so it's our main character's jobs to meet Walnut and protect him on his way to the airport. And when they show up, he's wearing a squirrel costume to hide his identity and has a briefcase on him that's really important. But of course, as the episode progresses, they get attacked. The characters fight, and there's a lot of really cool action that goes in some really creative directions. At one point, Takina ends up using the briefcase as a shield, which has Walnut screaming, but regardless, they successfully beat the mercenaries, and right as they're walking away... Oh my god, they actually fail. Eventually, an ambulance shows up and they're taken away, and as the two sit there in silence, the squirrel costume suddenly sits up, takes off its head, and we realize it was actually midlife crisis woman who was in there wearing a bulletproof costume. And the real Walnut is revealed to be a lolly with a voice changer who was hiding in the suitcase the entire time. How did I not guess that? She was literally right there in the opening, which I watched many times over and this still caught me by surprise. This is freaking genius. I want to meet whoever wrote this and shake their hand. Anyways, they basically orchestrated this entire stunt to fake Walnut's death so that the bad guys won't target her anymore. And they didn't tell Takina and Chisato about it because, well, they're terrible actors. And from that point onwards, Walnut, or Kurumi as they now call her, stays with them in exchange for helping out with the cafe and missions. But really, she just spends the majority of her days lazing around and avoiding work. She's great. And then there's Mizuki, who unironically is one of the funniest characters in the show besides Chisato. She does the entire thing where it's like, oh, I'm in my late 20s, I'm so old and I have to find a partner before I die soon, but it keeps failing, so I drown my sorrows with alcohol. Which, yeah, I've seen before, but goddamn does it still land. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Watching her get on her high horse all confidently, only to get shot down by Kurumi multiple times is cinema. There's something about older women being total failures that I will always find appealing, and her dynamic with the rest of the characters, especially with Walnut, with her just karate chopping her in the neck for reminding her she's still single, was very much needed. And then there's Mika, who honestly is the only mature person here. He's just a really chill and cool dude who's like a father figure to Chisato and even Takina to an extent. And he does that really well. His presence is like a warm blanket and he serves to fully balance out the cast as a whole. But he's also a huge badass and is also a very complex and likable character for so many reasons that I really don't want to spoil, but if you've seen the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and the way his character comes full circle was incredible to watch. But then that brings us to the main duo themselves, Takina and Chisato. Chisato is the more popular character for obvious reasons. Her cheerful and optimistic nature are super infectious, and her cheekiness makes for some incredibly fun moments. She's like if the sun was a person. You physically cannot picture her being depressed, and the show outright would not work the same without her. But I'm gonna take the contrarian route here and say that Takina is actually my favorite. Which is good because, you know, she's literally the main character. Takina starts off being overly serious to the point where she misunderstands basic human interaction, like a fish out of water. Generally, she's very monotone and is all business, only really caring about her work and that's it. Being an orphan girl trained to be a soldier, she was always taught that her worth was dependent on how well she can follow orders. What she doesn't know is that to the organization, she's completely disposable. But because of her upbringing, she, as well as most other Lycoris, are reliant on them. She just never knew anything different. And whenever she's out doing things with Chisato, she can't comprehend at first why she'd want to do anything that's irrelevant to their mission. But you also start to see the cracks beneath this.
あなたは DA に必要とされてるからいいですよね。私には私の居場所はもうここにはない。ごめんなさい。
In fact, the first thing we actually see her do is break protocol, which logically should go against what we just established about her as a character. This was a reckless decision that also happens to be the very thing that set the plot into motion, despite the fact that you'd expect her to be more by the book. And there's also an element of uncertainty there as well, since by shooting at everything, she was also risking the person's life she was trying to save. All of this already tells us a lot about her character and who she truly is, despite how she acts on the surface.
あの時タキナは仲間を救いたかった。それは命令じゃない。自分で決めたことでしょ。それが一番大事。
Beneath a cold exterior, this is a girl who's very human and flawed, but she just doesn't express that often. However, those rare moments where she does fully express herself, it's absolute peak. These scenes are so rare, but slowly become more and more frequent as Chisato rubs off on her, especially with how many times she's dragging her off just to lighten up and have some fun. The way her face becomes more expressive and she gradually starts to open up as the series continues is one of the greatest joys in watching this show. And I know this because a lot of you have definitely seen some of these clips before. If you think it's cute out of context, I guarantee you it becomes 10 times more adorable when actually watching the show. The person she is at the end is very different from the character we meet at the beginning. There's genuinely great character development here, especially with how her decision to break protocol at the end parallels what she did at the beginning, but this time she chooses to go about it differently. And also going from not really understanding the point of activities that aren't work related to planning out a whole day for her and Chisato and wishing they could have more time together, even after she was given what she thought she wanted. But of course, it's not just Takina who has good character writing. I've heard some people saying before that Chisato, while fun, may come across as a bit one-dimensional, but I actually disagree with this. I think she has more depth to her character than most give her credit for. Now, I do want to give a bit of a spoiler warning here. I don't think it particularly matters since you'll generally enjoy the series the same regardless, but if you're real particular about that, finish the rest of this video after watching the show. The reason Chisato is like this is because she's running on limited time. Her artificial heart is going to fail soon, and thanks to an incident at the hospital, that time is now even more limited. But at the same time, she wasn't supposed to make it to adulthood in the first place. She has congenital heart disease and was meant to die young, and it's only thanks to Mr. Yoshimatsu giving her a new artificial heart that she was able to live for this long. However, it's exactly because of this gift that she has a totally different view on life, one where she wants to cherish every single day and enjoy them to its fullest, which is why she always acts so upbeat despite everything. The fact that she was still able to continue being genuinely happy even after she was practically given a death sentence, and we sit with this for a whole episode, shows this so much. It's ironic because Mr. Yoshimatsu only did this because he saw how talented she was and wanted to use her as a weapon, intending for her to be a killing machine for the Allen Institute. Yet it's entirely because of this gift that she decided not to take lives. But Chisato is also somewhat naive. Even after she was told the truth about Mr. Yoshimatsu, she outright refused to believe that he was actually a bad person, clinging to the person she thought she knew and only accepting this reality when she's forced to by him directly. For the last few episodes, much of the conflict is centered around how Yoshimatsu has another artificial heart that can extend Chisato's life, and we're misled into thinking it's inside his briefcase. But then we soon realize that it's actually inside his body. The only way to save Chisato is to kill him. No matter the cost to himself, he wants her to kill. Now personally, I do still think that Chisato could have been pushed a bit more with her beliefs these last few episodes. This revelation mostly caused Takina to lose it and try to kill Yoshimatsu herself with Chisato holding her back. The only thing that really caused Chisato to finally pull the trigger is when Takina's life was in danger and it was the only way of saving her. And this moment was phenomenal. But also, it didn't kill him. It only injured him, and she knew this. But that also meant that in the end, Mika was the one to do it. And considering everything we know about his and Yoshimatsu's relationship, this final confrontation was a really poetic and tragic way of ending things. In itself, this was already really good as it is. Part of me just wishes that Chisato could have faced this inner conflict for a bit longer than she did, since in the end, Mika completely hid from her that Yoshimatsu is dead, which is completely in character for him and makes sense to do, but maybe she could have found out anyways and wrestled with that for a while. Maybe the note could have been hidden so that Mika wouldn't have seen it. I like that side of Chisato and would have liked to see more of it. It serves as a great parallel to how Takina got funner and more expressive over time, and seeing a more serious progression with Chisato serves as a great balance, which would make her bouncing back and being cheerful again like her usual self at the end even more impactful. And we do still get this to an extent. I just think it could have been pushed a bit more. Part of me can't help but feel like she got off a little easy here. But this can always be expanded upon in future seasons. I want a season 2, guys. This is just more reason why we need a season 2. We're getting a season 2, let's go! The last thing I wanted to talk about is that throughout most of the show, even when it gets more action-packed, it very consistently has these feel-good vibes. Even throughout the finale of those last few episodes, when things become more serious and the stakes were higher, it still knows how to balance those with the smaller moments that made me fall in love with the show in the first place. A scene that illustrates this perfectly in my opinion is the one where Majima, one of the main villains of the show, is holding Chisato at gunpoint at her apartment. This should be a fairly serious situation, but as soon as we remember that Chisato can dodge bullets, the tension lifts, which is followed up by Majima casually looking at the movie she has, and they just have this moment where they both geek out over them. Then Chisato says that she's gonna make some coffee and asks if he wants some, and it's only after all this when she asks why he's there exactly and what he wants. I freaking love this trope and I want to see more of it. Where people who are technically enemies just have a moment where they forget about their differences over a mutual interest. And a similar moment happens during literally the final fight scene, where Chisato gets tired out because of her heart problems and almost collapses. And instead of Majima using that to his advantage, he just stops and they take a breather, just sitting down with her to talk for a bit while she recovers and even having a drink. Conceptually, this all sounds stupid. He's the bad guy and was just trying to kill her a few seconds ago. But in execution, these are fantastic character moments. It shows that despite the situation, it's nothing personal and they don't actually hate each other. They totally could be friends if they weren't on opposing sides. And honestly, I kinda like to see what it'd be like if they ended up working together on the same side. Season 2. While they talk, we learn more in depth about what his goals are and how their outlooks on life differ, but it also shows what his true intentions were with that fight in the first place. How he was only interested in fighting her because she was the only one who ever managed to make him feel scared, and how facing her doesn't mean anything to him if she's not able to fight. The fact that these moments happened but still managed to not feel out of place shows to me that it knows how to balance the tone really well. There's this thing that most of you know, where the opening song in a show would play during a climactic scene near the end. Lycoris Recoil does this too, but the way it does it has to be one of my favorite instances. Here, they didn't just play the opening song. No, they went a step further and created a new version of it. One that begins quietly when Chisato stands up and starts talking about all the things she cares about in her life. And it slowly builds, adding more instruments as it continues, creating a beautiful transition to them loading their guns, standing across from each other, and the fight resuming with the song playing at full volume. And it continues playing throughout this fight to the end. The levels of hype is incredible, and whoever directed this moment knocked it out of the park. And while this scene is amazing and is one of my favorite examples of this, the show always somehow manages to perfectly execute these transitions, moving between the intense moments and the more reflective ones, the cute and funny moments as well as the epic and badass ones. The entire finale is a perfect mix of these things, and not once does it feel out of place. Like Goldilocks, it feels just right, and this is a seriously underrated aspect of anime whenever it's done well. Now, sure, like most anime, there are things that you could criticize about this show too. Like how most of the world building and several plot elements are very silly and make no sense if you think about it. If you were super critical about that sort of thing, you'd find flaws everywhere. So much of this series just would not function at all if you were to judge it by any kind of realistic standard. It's a series about if high school girls were somehow able to fight like John Wick. The most genius hacker in Japan looks like a 9-year-old and there's zero explanation for this. This other hacker guy wears a robot head on his head and never takes it off. It is very upfront, right from the beginning, how much you need to suspend your disbelief here, and it stays consistent with that. So I really was not going into this expecting anything realistic. So with that out of the way, if you haven't watched the show yet, and this sounded interesting to you, and like a fool you watched the spoilers anyways, don't worry. The show is still plenty of fun to watch despite that. The characters are fun, the action sequences are cool as heck, it has a surprising amount of depth, and overall I just had a great time watching it. Not bad for a show that I decided to check out because it happened to be on my plane. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Brandon Riley, and that is why Lycoris Recoil is freaking awesome. Also watch as my patrons make me say some stupid things. Keep your almost yuri to yourselves, peasants. Us real gentlemen prefer yaoi. Chisato's heart transplant robbed someone more deserving. This is a crafting table. Chicken jockey, the never. Ender pearl, tinted steel. I'm Steve. First we mine, then we craft. Let's Minecraft!